Brothers and sisters, there's a great truth about our faith, that if it was to really take root in our hearts and that we would have great conviction about it, if we were to meditate on it in hours of prayer, again and again, it does something to our heart. It stirs in us, which I think is really a response from us, which drives us upwards and onwards to the Lord. It calls us to the heights of sanctity. And when we sin, it affects this truth, in a sense that this truth gets disfigured in our mind, because guilt puts a barrier between us and this great truth. And what is this great truth? Well, this great truth is that God longs for you, that he desires you and I, that he's not just having us pass through life as if he's stoic, if he's unemotional, if he's unaffected by our love. Quite the opposite. God is pursuing us. God is coming after us. God, in the words of Mother Teresa, the great mystery that envelops her life is the "I thirst" of Jesus on the cross, which is the thirst of God, which when we hear those words, "I thirst," Mother Teresa sees in it a deep mystery, not only about Christ in his humanity, but also she hears something of the Father's thirst for each one of us, the Father's deep longing, which is of course the same longing of Christ, because they have this unity of love. They move in the same power of love and desire. I'm going to refer you, like I said yesterday, to the long video of Father Ignatius on Dominican House of Prayer on YouTube about that whole wonderful talk he gave on Saint Mother Teresa of Calcutta. But in it, he references that, this is a great, great mystery. How can we speak about God's desire, this desire for us, not in a way that something is lacking in God, but coming from a perfection, coming from his love. Father Ignatius refers to Pope Benedict in his great encyclical on love, Deus Caritas Est, God is love. In that encyclical, that great teaching, papal teaching, he talks about, the different ways of love in God, that the Greeks use different words to explain love. Agape is self-giving, sacrificial, altruistic love. Eros is that love of desire. Philios, the love of friendship. Sturgeon, familiar love. Come back to Eros, that in God has perfect Eros, that God has perfect desire for us. And, St. Bernard of Clairvaux, in his great commentary on the Song of Songs, we could see this passionate pursuit of our souls by God. And sometimes we could forget that. We could forget that, as if our whole life is about passionately pursuing God, which it is about, but that's because it's a response that God is passionately pursuing us. But sin gets in the way here, it scratches at the wound in all of us. We could really be convinced of this, and then we can fall from our understanding of this very quickly, either through scruples or maybe because we sin and we feel the burden of our guilt, and we can feel the whole experience. Like, how could God love me? And it may not even be a grave sin. It might just be a soul is seeking such perfection that even small sins will affect it. But we continue to bring these parts of our life back into contemplative prayer, back into prayer with the Lord, and we just show him our heart. We show him these areas of our life, just to feel and to reassure, to make that act of faith that his gaze of mercy is upon our heart, that his gaze of love is upon our heart. And that it will rebuild our confidence and our trust in the Lord. But come back to this thirst, this idea of being so convinced and really bringing this into prayer and mulling it over before the Eucharist, before Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, or in your quiet prayer space in your house or in a church. We would become convinced that if God longs for us, something happens. If we know that, something happens in our heart. We can't but go towards him. We're drawn, we allow ourselves to be drawn more towards him. So remember, God first loved us. And that's what St. John says. And everything we do is a response to that love. Today is the great feast of the martyr, St. Agnes, Santa Agnese in Italian. I went to her basilica this morning and I venerated her skull. She was martyred at a young age because of her ferocious choice to keep her chastity and her purity, and she was martyred. But she says in the evening prayer of the in the morning prayer of the church, there's an antiphon, and it says to describe her: what I desired I now see, what I hoped for I now possess. I'm united in heaven with the one I loved on earth. And in her life, she was able to give up her life because she was so convinced of this pursuit of love for her that she was so happy to actually see God's face in heaven, that face that gazed on her throughout her life.